Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So, read a little something from Bhagavad Gita, as it is, by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And it's the second chapter, contents of the Gita, summarized. And Krishna's explaining the nature of everything. The spiritual world, the material world, duty, devotional service, the goal of life. He's explaining everything. Arjuna is bewildered about what to do. He's in a difficult situation. So he's friends with Krishna. They're related, but now he's turned to Krishna. Please, I don't know what to do. Please advise me. I need help. I don't know what to do. So then Krishna's speaking to him, message of Godhead. One of Arjuna's arguments about why he didn't want to engage in this particular war, he was a warrior. They fought. They're soldiers. They had bows and arrows and whatever they had then, swords, whatever. And they were skilled warriors. They knew how to organize an army, and they knew how to do that. That was their activity. They were the protectors of society. And they were powerful. Arjuna was the most famous archer on the planet. His archery skills could not be rivaled by anyone. Krishna Chaitanya. But one of his arguments for not fighting was that because everyone was assembled at this particular place, all the leaders of the world, it was a world war. It didn't involve the citizens like the world wars today. The animals, the citizens, everyone gets bombed, into oblivion. That wasn't the way they fought then. They fought army against army, leaders against leaders. The leaders of the different armies and the countries, the kings, the princes, they were the first ones on the battlefield. They were the front line. It was a different kind of warfare. Germ warfare, chemical warfare, guerrilla warfare, propaganda warfare. Now, this was a different kind of fighting. There was integrity in the fighting. Although at Kurukshetra, there was a lot of funny stuff that went on, but basically there were codes of conduct that the warriors. And one of Arjuna's concerns was, this came out in a conversation with a devotee yesterday, one of Arjuna's concerns was, if this war is started because all the leaders of the world, it was a world war, they were all assembled, the leaders will be killed. It's leader against leader. And people will be left without leadership. The whole planet will be left without Kshatriya leadership, because they were all going to kill each other. So he was looking into the future. Krishna, if this war is fought and all these leaders are killed, the world will be without leaders. Women will be without protection. Thieves and corruption will come. And who knows what other horrible things will happen. Unwanted children will begin to take birth because the women won't be protected. It's going to destroy society. And he was right. Because we are in the aftermath of that war. 5,000 years later, it's exactly what Arjuna was saying. If we fight this war, it's going to be like this. And so we're like the, what do you call it when they drop a nuclear bomb? we're the fallout. We're the mutants of that war. We're the, it's what he saw. He foresaw that. So why was that war fought? Well, Krishna wanted it. Well, why did Krishna want that to happen to everybody? It's the changing of the seasons, the changing of the ages. It was time for the Kali Yuga. And that war ushered in the Kali Yuga. It had to happen. It's like, well, why is there a winter? Why isn't it always summer? You know, most of the planet experiences winter. There are a few tropical areas that don't. But most of the planet experiences some sort of winter time where the sun's rays aren't very strong, and the plants that are accustomed to this, they know how to go to sleep until the sun's rays are warm enough, and then they wake up in the spring. But why is there winter? It's the material world. Everything's cyclical. Everything has a beginning and an end. It's the way this place is designed. If you don't like it, leave. So there are a lot of us who don't like it, and we're preparing to leave. You go somewhere where there's no birth, death, old age, or disease. And the sun is always shining. So, but Arjuna did see that coming for the planet. And that was one of his arguments. So Krishna is speaking this advanced transcendental knowledge to help Arjuna do his duty. Krishna wants Arjuna to conduct this war. He wants all of that to happen because it's time for the Kali Yuga, which sets the stage for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he is giving the highest thing that ever can be given is pure ecstatic love of Godhead in a personal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He comes in the Kali Yuga. It's a setup, folks. Hare Krishna. So Krishna is speaking here to Arjuna. It's text 23. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translated commentaries I is Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Prabhupada. Text 23. Nainaṁ chindanti śastrāṇi, nainaṁ dahati pāvakaḥ, na cainaṁ kledayanty, na śoṣayati, mārutaḥ. Krishna says, the soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can he be burnt by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Prabhupada's commentary. All kinds of weapons, swords, flames, rains, tornadoes, etc., are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, etc., in addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as fire weapons, but formerly there were other weapons made of all different types of material elements. Firearms were counteracted by water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science. Nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Actually, they're working on these things. They're working on electromagnetic weapons. They're working on weather weapons, manipulating the weather, creating hurricanes, tornadoes. So they're working on these things. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut into pieces nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. Nor is it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the original soul. The connection with God can never be broken. The Mayavadi, however, cannot describe how the individual soul evolves from ignorance and consequently became covered by illusory energy. So the proponents of oneness, we're all one, they can't explain how an individual soul evolved into ignorance and became covered by illusory energy. They can't explain how that happens. Because they are atomic individual souls, sanatana, eternal, they're prone to be covered by illusory energy, and thus they become separated from the association of the Supreme Lord, just as the sparks of fire, although one in quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished when out of the fire. So in the first sentence, Prabhupada says, it's never possible to actually cut the individual soul from the original soul. But now he's explaining how they become separated. So, let's see where he goes with this. In the Varaha Purana, the living entities are described as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are eternally so, according to Bhagavad Gita also. So, even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate identity, as is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. It's never possible to cut individual souls from the original soul. That's because we're always separated from Krishna. We're always individuals. It's not like you got a cookie cutter and you do a cookie cutout, separate. That's what Prabhupada means when he said it's not possible to cut the individual souls from the original soul. It's not like originally we're all just one kind of amorphous spiritual mass. And then somehow living entities become covered, and then they become individuals. It doesn't happen like that. That's what Prabhupada is pointing out. We're always individuals, but they become covered by the illusory energy and are separated from the association of the Supreme Lord directly. They're associating with the Lord through his material energy, but it's indirect. So they're separated from direct. And that's like the sparks of the fire become extinguished when they're out of the fire. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It's not the end of them, but they become smothered, covered. They're still individuals. Still individuals. All right. Text 24. Krishna says to Arjuna, Achejoyam adayoyam aklejo śoṣayati nitya sarvagata stanur achaloyam sanatana. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, can neither be burned nor dried. He is everlasting, all-pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Prabhupada's commentary. All these qualifications of the atomic soul definitely prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit whole, and it remains the same atom eternally without change. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply in this case because the individual soul is never expected to become one homogeneously. After liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain a spiritual spark in the effulgent rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the intelligent souls enter the spiritual planets to associate with the personality of Godhead. There's two types of liberation. One, liberated from material covering and in knowledge and eternity, becomes situated in inactivity, no activity, just existing in the effulgence of the Lord. That's one type of liberation. It's not actually a very solid platform, because the nature of the soul is to be active, is to have personal relate. We are persons ultimately, so it can remain like that for some time, but it's not a very solid platform. Whereas those that enter into the spiritual planets and engage in devotional activities, service to the Lord, in the association of other servants of the Lord, they go there, they never come back. Because they have something to do. They have association. Hare Krishna, Hare, and they have something in common. Krishna, Radha Krishna. Yeah, there was a devotee that I hadn't seen in a long time, and I reconnected with them. This was a while ago, and we were very happy to reconnect again. We'd done a lot of service together in the past, and it had been 20, 25 years since we'd seen each other, And we're very happy to. So we were thinking, well, okay, this is great. And we tried doing a few little things here, going to a program or two there, and going shopping here. But then we realized that we don't really have much in common. There's nothing to really make this relationship ongoing. It was just nice to see you again. We did a few little things, and then because we didn't have the same, we didn't have anything in common. Even though I'm practicing Krishna consciousness, they're practicing Krishna consciousness, on a practical level, we didn't have anything in common. Hare Krishna. So devotees stay together when they have a service that they do together. We experienced that, at least I experienced that, some are experiencing it now, distributing books. You've got a team that goes out, and it's the camaraderie and the association, and you're focused on distributing the books. Or pujari work in the temple. There's several different servants doing pujari service. Or the kitchen. Or different aspects of service. Someone interested in farming, they have something in common with devotees who are interested in farming for Krishna. So association is like that. You have to have something in common. And we're starting to experience something really wonderful in the Japa Club. We have something in common. We want to be strong in chanting the Maha Mantra on beads. And every day, meet that vow of 16 rounds. And we're finding, because we have that in common, we have nice association also. There's mutual appreciation, and we have something in common. And we know it's pleasing Prabhupada, and it's helping devotional service, becoming Krishna conscious. So yeah, it's, you have something in common. Otherwise, you can just be polite and respectful. But there's another devotee I came across the other day who's feeling very isolated and can't find association and I know the feeling. We all know that feeling. But they're going through that right now. And so they just need to depend on Krishna and to be engaged in service with others. It almost doesn't even matter what the service is, to be honest with you. It's the association. I mean, it does matter, but by association, then we're enthused to do the service. There's a few devotees here that I feel close to, and they're talking about going out Christmas marathoning book distribution. And I'm thinking, if they're going to go out, I'd like to go with them. So I don't know what's going to happen. But it's by association. When I first came to a temple in 1971, when I walked in, it was because of the devotees. There was something about them that I wanted to be around them. I wanted their association, or whatever it is they were doing, I wanted to do that too. So, association in serving Krishna, and if we're sincere and we really want to make some advancement, and Krishna makes the arrangements. He parts the Red Sea, make your escape from Egypt, bondage. Yeah, so like in this purport here, is that after liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain a spiritual spark and just glow in the effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But intelligent souls enter into the spiritual planets to associate with the Personality of Godhead. The word sarvagata, all-pervading, is significant because there's no doubt that living entities are all over God's creation. They live on the land, in the water, in the air, within the earth, even within fire. The belief that they are sterilized in fire is not acceptable because it is clearly stated here that the soul cannot be burnt by fire. Therefore, there is no doubt that there are living entities also in the sun planet with suitable bodies to live there. If the sun globe is uninhabited, then the word sarvagata, living everywhere, becomes meaningless. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let's read a little bit from Prabhupada Leela. When everything failed, and Prabhupada had absolutely nothing, no family, no money, didn't even have proper clothes, wandering around Delhi trying to print his Back to Godhead. Finally, he took sannyas and he went to Vrindavan. And he's feeling very much relieved being in Vrindavan. He's feeling very relieved. But he's still trying to print his Back to Godhead, and he's translating and he's writing. So he goes from Vrindavan to Delhi. I wonder how far Vrindavan is from Delhi. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Okay, it's 3 hours, about 3 hours by train. So like maybe 200 miles. They have it in kilometers here. We're not kilometer people in the US. So how many miles is kilometers? I'm thinking about kilometers to miles. 113 miles. Okay, it's 113 miles. 3 hours by train. So trains going like 40 miles an hour or something like that. Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, commuting became difficult. He would take the morning train into Delhi and, having nowhere to stay, return to Vrindavan the same night. That didn't give him much time in Delhi, and it was expensive. At first, he stayed with Mr. Gupta, a pious gentleman who studied the Gita regularly and afforded sadhus a place to stay. Abai had explained to Mr. Gupta about his back to Godhead and his desires to preach in the West. It had been a good arrangement, and Abai had kept to himself, writing. But in time, another sadhu took the room. Even with his minimal personal expenses, it was difficult to raise enough in donations to cover traveling, printing, mailing. Giving copies to Back to Godhead away wasn't difficult, and he was doing that in Vrindavan. But working alone, writing, editing, selling, soliciting donations was too much. The printer, Mr. Jain, was amazed, wondering why a person would put himself through such difficulties printing a newspaper he couldn't afford. So Srila Prabhupada says here, I worked for Back to Godhead day and night. In the beginning, when I was a householder, I did not care if somebody paid or not paid. I used to distribute liberally. But when I left my household life and I was living alone, sometimes in Vrindavan, sometimes in Delhi, or sometimes traveling for pushing on BTG, they were very hard times. After his 12th consecutive fortnightly edition, what's fortnight? Is that once a month? Boy, Google's so smart. Google knows everything. Hey Google, what's a fortnight? Two weeks. And it's a fortnight because it's a shortened form of the English word 14 nights. So it's a fortnight. 2 weeks. He was printing twice a month. After his 12th consecutive fortnightly edition, the issue for November 20, 1956, Abai ran out of money. Mr. Jain had to throw up his hands, saying he couldn't print simply out of friendship. Abai returned to Vrindavan, where he spent his time writing, but with no plan for publication. 1956. Let's see, I was 8 years old. I was 8 years old at that time. It was because people weren't interested in becoming Krishna consciousness, because they had no time. The Back to Godhead had failed financially. Certain sadhus in India were celebrated and influential, but Abai was not among them. Of course, the uncompromising preaching he had learned from his spiritual master, the chopping technique, in which he openly criticized revered politicians and holy men, was not likely to win him favor and patronage. Don't flatter, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had said. Speak the truth, and if Krishna is pleased, you will come out successful. Money will come. And Abai had firm faith in this. That was his outstanding asset, his faith in his spiritual master. He was sure that by following Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he would receive his blessings and the blessings of Lord Chaitanya. Although for the last 2 years he had followed any path that had opened as far as it had led, he had remained one-pointed, aimed at serving the order of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He was confident. Sooner or later, he would obtain substantial backing. He would find a sympathetic audience, sincere workers would join him. a letter came to Abai in Vrindavan from his disciple Acharya Prabhakar Mishra, and it gave Abai an idea. Acharya Prabhakar, who was in Bombay working as secretary of the Sanskrit department at the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, invited Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, to join him there for preaching together, just as in the old days. The founder-director of the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan was Governor K.M. Munshi, the same governor whose wife had pressured Abai to give up the Radha Memorial in Jhansi. But Acharya Prabhakar, having recently established a friendship with the governor, intimated to Abai that the governor might be willing to help. Thus, in January 1957, after assuring Mahant Gopal that he would return and that he would send 5 rupees a month for his room, Abai traveled to Bombay. So that was his room at the Keshigat temple, at the Keshigat. And he didn't want to lose that room. So he said he would send 5 rupees a month. Acharya, 5 rupees is such an insignificant amount of money. I don't know what the exchange rate is now, but how much is a rupee? Come on, Google, how much is a rupee? Of course, back then it was worth more because of inflation and the economic situation changing. But what's the exchange rate now, just for the heck of it? One rupee equals, well, he was sending, for, it's not even a penny. Well, it's a penny. 5 rupees equals Hare Krishna. 6.5 cents. So he would send, may have been a little different then, but he would send a very small amount. Now, $1, 6.5 rupees. $1 equals 6.5. 1 rupee equals 6.5 cents. No, 5 rupees equals 6.5 cents. So he would send 6.5 cents every month. I promise I'll send. Of course, exchange rate may have been different, but Hare Krishna. We get the idea. It was a pretty small amount. Acharya Prabhakar got Abai quarters in the faculty residence and introduced him to various scholars and religionists. They then attended a lecture by Governor Munshi. So this is a lecture by the governor. And his title of his lecture is, "What is Wrong with the World?" Afterwards, Abai approached the governor, expressing his appreciation of the speech, but stressing that it would make a spiritual movement. They needed a spiritual movement to avert the imminent global disasters. Without God consciousness, even Mr. Munshi's work in Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan would be a waste of time. Abai spoke of his interest in reviving the League of Devotees, and he suggested how he might work within the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan to infuse the life of God consciousness into the governor's cultural projects. Governor Munshi responded by offering Abai a post as honorary professor of Bhagavad Gita. Abai accepted and gave the governor some copies of Back to Godhead, requesting that he read them in his spare time. As honorary professor of Bhagavad Gita, Abai began each class with Hare Krishna Kirtan, and then lectured on the Gita, presenting Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he soon found his post confining. Within the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, he found little scope for reviving the League of Devotees. Then, along with other members of the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Abai attended the 5th annual convention of the World Academy of Sanskrit at Kurukshetra, where 5,000 years before, Lord Krishna had spoken Bhagavad Gita. India's president, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Governor Munshi, and many scholars and pundits from all over India participated in the discourses. But everyone there had his own thing to say, apart from the conclusions of Lord Krishna. So Abai considered the meeting a waste of time. Since he was not scheduled to speak, since the non-devotional discussions on the Gita disturbed him, and since he saw that nothing practical would come out of such a theoretical meeting, he left Kurukshetra and returned to Vrindavan. Acharya Pāvakaḥ soon joined Abai. As they talked together in Abai's room at Vamsi Gopalaji temple, Abai spoke again of his desire to revive the League of Devotees. After having recently seen the watered-down cultural programs in Bombay and Kurukshetra, he felt even more keenly the need for a society of pure devotees. There were already so many cultural and religious organizations. If he liked, he could join one. But where was that organization with which he could affiliate himself wholeheartedly? Only the League of Devotees espoused the conclusions of Lord Chaitanya and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, vigorous worldwide preaching of devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Abai drafted an appeal to the generous public, modern philosophers, leaders, and religionists on behalf of the League of Devotees. The activities of the League, he stated, would be to publish Back to Godhead in English, with translations in many other languages, to educate young men and women for worldwide preaching, and to operate a press solely for printing transcendental literature. These programs would require an estimated 3,000 rupees per month, and he appealed for help. Abai concluded, Vrindavan is the sacred place of topmost importance, and the headquarters of this league is therefore situated here. Using the impressive new titles Honorary Professor of Gita, Bharatiya Vigyan Bhavan, and Honorary Secretary of Hari Bhavan, Abai, with the assistance of Acharya Pāvakaḥ, launched another attempt at rallying support for Back to Godhead and the League of Devotees. Within a few days, Acharya Pāvakaḥ returned to his post in Bombay, and Abai was again alone in Vrindavan. He loved Vrindavan, yet with no means to publish and preach, he was not content there. If he were to travel, he might be able to enlist members for the League. He thought of Kanpur, which was a city, more than 100 big factories, and many wealthy industrialists, some of whom he had met during his business travels. He decided to go. After printing some League of Devotee membership forms, he explained to Mahant Gopal that he would be away for a couple of months. Mahant was surprised, although most elderly sadhus who came to Vrindavan stayed put, and some even took vows never to leave. This quiet Babu was coming and going constantly. Krishna. Yeah, so it's a long chapter. There's still more going on in that. Okay. Krishna. So these are his struggles. We see Prabhupada now, oh, big Prabhupada, but none of that happened until he was like 70. His whole life he was struggling to try to, most of the time alone, very little total commitment. Hare Krishna. There was one lecture that he gave when his disciples were there, and I don't know, I can't remember exactly where it was. Was it Bhaktisiddhanta's Appearance Day or something. Anyway, he gave a lecture, and he started to, like, he was getting emotional. You didn't see Prabhupada emotional usually. He had to stay focused. He wasn't, but the emotions were all going on inside, but outside he's surrounded by all kinds of people, so he has to stay very steady. But at this one point, he was looking out amongst the disciples and said something like, "Who knew? Who knew I would come to America? Who knew that you, boys and girls, young men and women, you would come to me? Who knew? Who knew? These are all the workings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead." Something like that. But he was like awestruck. Who knew this would happen? Because of what he'd been through. Who knew? It would actually happen. And it's still happening. Who knew? And who knows where it's going? It's just getting started. Jai Śrīla Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.